Hello and welcome to Gaming Gain. My name is Muzz and I have a little presentation for you. This presentation is basically all about my experience of doing intermittent fasting for a year. I'll get into a little bit what intermittent fasting is, but if you kind of already know and you were like me, you were curious of what the results could be, what could have happened if you actually went ahead and done it. So this is what it's going to be about, all about my experience of doing intermittent fasting for a year. So I'm neither for or against intermittent fasting at this point. I've done it for a year. I have now stopped. I will say that, and I'll get into a little bit why I stopped in just a little bit in the upcoming slides. But it's up to the individual. Like any workout, sure, getting it like any workout advice, fitness advice, health advice, unless it's with a doctor, it's up to the individual. You can obviously hear people's takes and try to form your own opinion based on that, but if you want to give it a go, go ahead and give it a go. Something that worked for me might not necessarily work for you. That's something that's important. So if you're hearing these changes and if you're hearing some of the things that I'm saying about intermittent fasting, you're thinking that sounds good, just remember that it might not work for you. And this is all just purely based on my experience, which goes into the next slide. I don't know if intermittent fasting was a factor in any of the things I'm about to talk about. I didn't do anything scientific to kind of measure anything. I'm just purely basing it on what I felt, what changes I noticed during the period where I was doing intermittent fasting. So whether or not that had an input, I don't know. So how it was done, I started in March of 2020, towards the end of it, around about the time the pandemic really started to close things down, and I ended it in May 2021. So I'd done it for best part of a year and a month or two, and I was doing the 16-8 program, which is where 16 hours of the day you're not eating, and then for an 8-hour period you can eat. So I was doing it 12 till 8 was my eating period, and then the rest I couldn't eat. I could only drink water, have a cup of green tea, stuff like that. And I kept the kind of same diet to what I had before, so I didn't really change any of the any of the food intake. It was purely just the same kind of stuff that I was eating before. I was just trying to get it into that time window of 8 hours. So early changes, what I noticed in the first couple of weeks was it was very tough to stick to. I will say that the kind of my body didn't adapt to it well. I was hungry pretty much from the moment I woke up, drank a lot of water to try and keep me going. Once I got to 12, I was starving and ravenous at this point for some food. I did lose weight in the stomach area, as you might expect. So I lost a bit of weight there, and I was honestly having second thoughts about doing exercise in the morning because, I'd always associated doing workouts with having some energy, and breakfast obviously is a good way to get energy in the morning. So I was having second thoughts about doing that early on, which changed as we'll go on, which I'll go on to speak about. So getting used to it, after I kind of got used to it, it took me about a month to really allow my body to adapt to the intermittent fasting. After that, I would wake up, I'd be fine, I'd still be drinking the water, but not nearly as much. And once it got to 12, honestly, I could push it to 1. I think the latest I pushed it to was 3. I don't know why. I just maybe wanted to see how long I could prolong it for. And yeah, so after about a month, so I saw mainly results in the abs. My abs muscle really started to show up as a result of the weight loss in the stomach, and I was drinking a lot more water throughout the day just to kind of keep myself topped up, especially at night. At night was the big one. That was, I think, key into some of the changes that I'm going to talk about, which I thought were quite positive from intermittent fasting. So the noticeable changes, and again, going to reiterate, none of this this could have happened if I wasn't doing intermittent fasting. Some of it I do think might be linked to it, but purely based off speculation at this point. So muscle growth, I seen some muscle growth throughout the past year, specifically my biceps and my shoulder area. And whether that has to do with the workouts that I'm doing, because the workouts I was doing in the gym were different to the ones I was having to do at home. I was getting a much better sleep, which I think is one of the ones that could have been linked to intermittent fasting, and I'll get onto that in a little bit. Bit embarrassing, but the toilet routine, not going to go into great detail, but it was all over the place. Let's just say that, keep it at that. My attitudes towards food changed. Now, this was quite a positive one in terms of I was allowed to eat a little bit more of stuff that I wouldn't usually eat, so like sweets, stuff like that. And I kind of was lax on that because of the time frame window. So I thought, I can eat what I want in here, and then after the time frame window, fair enough, I can't eat any more. And just more water. That was a huge one, I think. Was the more water I was drinking. I'm quite good. I was quite good, and still I'm good at drinking a lot of water throughout the day. But on intermittent fasting, I was drinking probably 2 to 3 more liters a day when I already drink like 2 or 3 already. So it was a good change for that. So you're hearing some of these changes and you're asking, that sounds quite good. And it was good for a long period. I will say I enjoyed doing it. I enjoyed the routine of it. I enjoyed the kind of, not the challenge of it, because it wasn't really challenging after the first month. It was just kind of part of my daily routine. But I enjoyed that feeling that I was kind of doing something different, and I was enjoying the changes that I was seeing. Whether or not it was based on intermittent fasting is up in the air, but in my head it was because of intermittent fasting. So coming out of lockdown, I just don't have the time. If you are a professional bodybuilder who gets paid to work out, you have time to do this. If you're someone who works in childcare, like I do, you don't have time to do this. It is something that I certainly could have done it with more timing, but if you're going to work, then you've got the gym or athletics after, and the athletics finishes at 9, you've had your first meal at 12, you're having to fit in so much more. It just got to the point where it was becoming unfeasible to actually do on a day-to-day basis because of work and training at different sporting events. So with different sports. So if I was going to the gym, I could manage it a little bit more, but athletics is so much more demanding. So to have a bigger meal before that and then finish without having anything, I felt was not helping me. Feeling bloated was really an issue towards the end. My stomach was just constantly bloated. It just constantly felt like it was puffed up, and it didn't make me feel great, if I'm being honest. It was a very strange feeling. I did not enjoy it. And then I also, unfortunately, got a hernia. Now, again, not saying it was because of intermittent fasting, but certainly made me reevaluate kind of what I was doing at that time. And I think intermittent fasting was one of the things that I thought, okay, maybe it's starting to the cons are starting to outweigh the pros at this point, so I ended up stopping. So since stopping, I've actually seen some changes. I actually have a worse sleep pattern now. I find it really difficult to get to sleep on a regular basis at the same time, whereas when I was on intermittent fasting, I was going to sleep about maybe 11, 12ish, and then getting up at 8. No problem there. Whereas since I've stopped, I've seen kind of a regression in that, where I find it difficult to get to sleep and I find it difficult to get up. Not bloated anymore, which is a good thing. My stomach feels fine now, feels great. I still have the little hernia that I'm keeping an eye on, but it's good to not feel that way anymore. Noticeable difference in the attitude towards food. I'm a lot more conscious about what I'm eating again. I'm thinking a lot more. Instead of maybe having 1 or 2 sweets a day, I'm having it 1 or 2 a week, and I'm back to really. I don't count my calories, but I'm consciously thinking about what I'm eating and is it healthy, is it not healthy. Whereas on intermittent fasting, I was not doing that. So one factor that is interesting is that my workouts have stayed consistent across all of this. I didn't feel any drops in energy levels. I didn't feel any major differences in the way I actually do my workout. Even going for runs, I would go for runs on an empty stomach. I would work out on an empty stomach, feel fine. I would do sprints on an empty stomach, which I thought no chance I'd be doing that, but I was doing really intense workouts while not having any food in my system in the morning, and then obviously eating after. So I was really impressing myself in that regard, that I could be able to do these high intensity workouts and still feel fine, even though I think most people would think, oh, if you don't have breakfast, you'll faint or something like that. So that was quite an interesting thing that I took out of it. And to end on a don't know why I ended on this, but yeah, toilet routine's back to normal, basically. It's much more regular, similar times. Not going to go into a great detail of that. Just an interesting observation I made. So that is it. That is my kind of take. That is my experience with intermittent fasting. Would I do it again? Probably not if I'm working full time. If I'm working full time and I'm doing stuff after the work, it's not feasible in my opinion. Was there a good period of intermittent fasting? Certainly, from about June 2020 to about January December 2020, January 2021. That was a good period, mainly because of the lockdowns and all that. Obviously, we came out of lockdown a little bit, but stuff really wasn't that open, so I couldn't go to the gym. I couldn't go back to athletics or football, and it was a nice balance, being able to do the intermittent fasting and still do my work at the same time. But once everything started opening up, that's when I really noticed, like, maybe this can't be done. So that is my thoughts. If you have any thoughts on intermittent fasting, if you've done it, if you're curious about it, I'm more than happy to ask any questions. Again, nothing scientific in here, purely based on my experience, so bear that in mind. Hope you've enjoyed the video. And with all that said, all that's left is there. Any thoughts, comments, general hostile remarks, leave them below. Thank you very much. Bye bye.